as I told you, or maybe we have not discussed, uh, see, these are the different types of SDLC models that uh, are okay followed by the industry. Okay, maybe now or okay in the previous years. Fine. So
Yes.
each and every SDLC, I mean, all the SDLCs will have these many phases. That is requirement gathering, project planning, designing, coding, testing, and maintenance, release and maintenance. Okay. Now, why these different types of SDLC model are necessary, or why companies or why the software industry started using different types of SDLCs? Okay. That we need to understand. Only after that we'll come to know, okay, why so many SDLC models are there. Fine. So I told you, I mean, we discussed in the last class that in early 90s, right, between 1990 to 1995, 1998, okay, only the simple applications were developed. I mean, in those days, right, the communication was very um, tough. Okay, there was no internet. Okay, before 2000, right? Very hardly people used to use internet. There was no browser concept. Everything was client server. So that's why before we started using cell phone, even the messaging was the biggest challenge for, okay, I mean, for communication. Now most of the applications, most of the softwares which were getting developed in those days, right, were more of like billing and information. Okay, simple ERP, simple CRM. Okay, all those application were getting developed, and most of the companies okay developed their applications using waterfall model. Okay, so the industry experts, what they have done is before adapting waterfall model, there was no proper approach at all. Okay, the client used to give the requirement, these guys used to develop it, and then they used to give back to the client. There was no organized way of, okay, developing the software. Right, there was no organized way. So what is the meaning of SDLC? As I told you, it's a systematic approach to develop the application. So then there was a committee called as CMMI, that is Capability Maturity Model Integration. Okay, so there was one organization called CMMI. What they have done is they made a, a standard to develop the software or an application, and we call this as waterfall model. Fine, and we call they named it as waterfall model. In waterfall model, right, what the client used to do is they used to give the requirement. Fine, say an example, I am a client and you are a software company. I have certain requirements, like I want to develop an application similar to phone book. You have a phone book in your mobile phone, right? So I want a phone book, fine, which I want to use to store all my phone number and the details of, I want to store date of birth, each and every information about the person. Okay, so that information I need. Now, as I am a client, I used to come to you and I used to give all the requirements and fly back to my place. Maybe after, and what you used to do is you used to give certain time like 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever timeline based on the estimation. So what you used to do is I need 3 months to develop it. So then the client used to approve it and then he used to fly back. Fine. So once he flies back, once the requirements are freezed, fine, in waterfall model, we don't have any change request. Okay, I'll tell you how. Okay, now let's understand what is waterfall model, then we'll come to the different SDLC model. The first phase of again waterfall model is requirement gathering, and then the planning, project design, coding, testing, release and maintenance. Now why waterfall model is called as waterfall? Why not some other SDLC model? Waterfall, right? Always water will flow from top to bottom. Correct, right? It will never flow from bottom to top. ऊपर से नीचे नहीं जाएगा, ऊपर से नीचे जाएगा, वो नीचे से ऊपर कभी भी नहीं जाएगा, right? So that's why we name it as waterfall model. Once the client gives the requirement to the company, he don't have a scope. He cannot change his requirements once it is freezed, once it is finalized. Okay, so that's why we have done an arrow mark here, that is only down down down. Okay, there is no upper flow here, there is always down flow. So in waterfall model, the phases will again never come back. So that's why we call it as an unidirectional SDLC model. Waterfall model, okay, is also called as unidirectional SDLC model. Why? Because it flows from top to bottom. We implement waterfall model when the requirements are clear and no change request after freezing. That means once the requirements are freezed, finalized, there will not be any changes in the requirement. Understood? There will not be any changes in the requirement. It is adapted only for the simple and small project. That means, okay, it is not used for the long duration projects. Consider that if you want to develop a software and it is very huge and it will take somewhere around 2 years to develop it, will not go for waterfall model. Only simple projects with small duration, then we'll go for waterfall model, and we don't have any changes in the requirement once we give it to the company, then we'll go for waterfall model. Understood? We cannot go back to the previous phase once it is completed. That means once the planning is done, we cannot again go back to requirement gathering. Once the coding is done, we cannot go back to designing part. So it is done, it is done. No change request. Okay, less budget. Fine. Okay, waterfall model, right? Um, it is not expensive SDLC model. Fine. It can be built at the lesser cost. Disadvantage of waterfall model. Till the previous phases are completed, other resources will sit idle. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, let's go back to this. See, we are into requirement gathering phase. Consider that we cannot, okay, we are in requirement gathering phase. All the other teams, apart from the business analyst, will sit idle. They'll not do any job. Okay, they'll go to company, time pass, come back. Go to company, time pass, come back. So, got it right? Till this is done, all the other teams will sit idle. Okay, once the project planning team will start working, these teams again will sit idle. One in project designing phase, other teams will sit idle. In development part, that is in coding, testing team will sit idle, designers as well as the business analyst team will sit idle. So in this way, okay, most of the resources will be sitting idle till the previous phases are completed. No scope for change request, as I told you, there's no changes. Cannot do long-term projects. So we cannot develop the projects which are long-term. Okay. So this is basically about waterfall model. So whenever somebody asks you, explain me about waterfall model, how will you explain? Okay, you can just tell that waterfall model is an unidirectional SDLC model where, okay, once the requirements are freezed, we cannot have a scope of the change request. It has a similar phases as we have in other SDLC model, that is requirement gathering, project planning, project design, coding, testing, and release. Fine. So in waterfall model, okay, we will be using waterfall model, we can develop the small duration projects with the where the requirements are very clear, and we cannot adapt this SDLC model where, okay, we have a longer duration. Got it, right? This is how you should explain about waterfall model. Understood? They'll be asking you about the advantages and disadvantages. Fine. So waterfall model have very less advantages and more disadvantages. Got it, right? That's why nowadays there's no company, hardly companies are using this. I mean, now it is outdated almost. Okay. But still we have to learn this SDLC model. Reason is this is the first SDLC model which is, okay, in the used in the market. Understood? So the next is iterative SDLC model. Iterative SDLC model. Got it, right? Iterative. Now we have several disadvantages in waterfall model, right? We have some issues in waterfall model. What are they? Again, same thing. They are, okay, we cannot do for the longer duration. Once the requirements are freezed, we cannot change it. But, okay, in late 90s and early 2000, that is 2000 के बाद, okay, क्या होने लगा, client what they started doing is they started asking for the complex application, and they started giving the requirements. They wanted to give the requirements in small phases. छोटे छोटे phases में वो requirement देना चाह रहे थे, but there was no proper way to do it. So that's why what these experts have done is they have removed all the disadvantages of waterfall model, and then they have, okay, developed one more SDLC model which will overcome all the disadvantages of waterfall model, and they named it as iterative SDLC model. What is the meaning of iterative? Repetitive. Repetitive. Iterative is nothing but repetitive. Understood? In this SDLC model, right? In this SDLC model, the client have a scope of providing the requirements in small intervals. Okay, so that's why what they have done is, okay, they have named it as iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3. So हम क्या कर सकते हैं, the client क्या कर सकता है, he can give the requirement in small phases, small intervals. That is, okay, वो requirement 1, iteration 1 में क्या होगा, requirement 1 देगा. Okay, रिक्वायरमेंट 1 मीन्स उसमें थोड़ा सा रिक्वायरमेंट रहेगा कि लॉगिन पेज डेवलप करो, रजिस्ट्रेशन पेज डेवलप करो, होम पेज रेडी कीजिए, एंड you'll be having a few more requirements. So, and he will give certain time, say an example 40 days, consider that 40 days. So the company will develop all the requirements of iteration 1, and he will do a iteration 1 release. Understood? So उसमें ready करके दे देगा. Then what happens is client will again come up with the requirement in iteration 2, right? He'll come up with few more requirements. वो बोलेगा कि मुझे और थोड़ा requirement है इसी application में. I want to develop few more features like, okay, as I told you, उनका जो phone number डालना है और date of birth डालना है और few more pages he need to add. So वो क्या करेगा, फिर से ओके, रिक्वायरमेंट देगा, कंपनी क्या करेगा, फिर से रिक्वायरमेंट डेवलप करेगा जो रिक्वायरमेंट 2 है। रिलीज 2 इज इक्वल टू इटरेशन 2 रिलीज इज इक्वल टू रिक्वायरमेंट ऑफ इटरेशन 1। बोले तो इसमें जो डेवलप किया है वो प्लस इटरेशन 2 रिक्वायरमेंट, जो नया रिक्वायरमेंट दिया है क्लाइंट ने, प्लस चेंजेस ऑफ रिक्वायरमेंट नंबर 1। अगर प्रीवियस इटरेशन का कुछ चेंजेस है, फाइन, प्रीवियस इटरेशन का कुछ चेंजेस है, अभी समझ लीजिए, आई मीन यू हैव अ लॉगिन पेज, वहाँ पे नेम एंड पासवर्ड, यूजर नेम एंड पासवर्ड रहेगा, लॉगिन रहेगा, कैंसिल रहेगा, और रजिस्ट्रेशन रहेगा। अभी नेक्स्ट रिक्वायरमेंट में क्या करेगा, वो बोलेगा कि आई वांट, ओके, यूजर नेम, पासवर्ड एंड ओटीपी बोलेगा, फाइन। So then what will happen is he will also ask for the changes in the requirement of number 1. So what the company will do is, again, they will make the changes and then they will develop it and then they will give it. But यहाँ waterfall model में it is not possible. Once the requirement is given, that's it, we cannot do the changes. But यहाँ पे क्या है, every iteration में he can give new requirement, he can ask for the changes of previous requirements. Okay, so जो भी disadvantages waterfall model में था, I mean all the disadvantages are void, that is removed from the waterfall model. In the same way, iteration 3 is developed. In that, iteration 1 requirement, iteration 2 requirement, plus iteration 3 requirement, and then the changes of iteration 1 and iteration 2 requirements. So I say we will start developing it. We will be developing the new things. Okay, this is how we do it in iteration model. Fine. So I'll just explain you, I mean, I'll just go through what are the points we have to understand in iteration SDLC model. That is, one is in iterative SDLC model, client has a scope of providing the requirement in small durations. Hence, the releases will be done in phases. That means, okay, the client has a scope of providing the requirements in the small intervals. Okay. In iterative SDLC model, most of the drawbacks of waterfall model have overcome. So जो भी drawbacks थे वो निकाल दिए. And then, okay, here the client can takes, okay, here we can do a long-term, okay, projects. So that's why, okay, the companies can take long-term projects and describe the budget. Fine. So he can do it. Fine. Just change it to company can take long-term projects and describe the budget. So here, whenever we say long-term projects, we can describe the budget whenever the client provides the requirement in small intervals. Got it, right? Your understanding?
Yes.
Have you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if you have any doubts, you can just ask me. Okay. So because these are two important SDLC models. Once the iterative, okay. So this is basically the all whatever drawbacks we had in waterfall, we have overcome it. The next is very important SDLC model, that is V model. Right? V model. Now in V model, right, we also call this as verification and validation SDLC model. Verification and validation SDLC model. So when we see what is the major difference that we can see in V model and other SDLC model, what difference we can see between waterfall model and V model? See, in other SDLC model, right, we have same requirement gathering, we have project plan, HLD and LLD, okay, coding, and then testing. See here, in waterfall model, we have only one phase of testing. But here, how many phases are there? Unit testing, integration testing, system testing, UAT, and release. So that means there are 4 formal phases. There are four formal phases of testing, okay, the application. Understood? There are four formal phases. So that's why, okay, people started giving more importance to V model. Understood? So whenever we have a long-term projects, and what do you mean by long-term project? More than 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Consider these banking applications and healthcare applications. All will be long-term projects. Okay, so they'll start with 1 year, 2 year contract, but even after 15, 20 years, the application will be optimized. They will add new features, they will modify, they will delete, they will do a lot of research. Okay, they will come up with new ideas, new technologies, more user friendly. Okay, all those things. Now, whenever we say, okay, whenever the client um, wanted to do or want to do a long-term project, right? Um, we'll go for V model. Fine. And when we say long-term project, I'll just give one example. There is one banking project or banking product which is developed by Infosys. They started building the application 25 years back. Fine. Still they are doing it. Still they are developing it. They have more than 200 bank as their customers, but still they are developing it. Well, what is the meaning of this? 25 years. Okay, it's very huge time to develop a software. I mean, to do something in one particular project. Fine. People who joined in that project, right? Now they are not working. 95%, even 99% of the resources have changed the job, changed the project. Now still that application is up and running. Still new resources are joining. Still they are understanding the application. Still they are working. Still they are coding. Still they are testing. Now how it is possible? Okay. So if we are doing a long-term project, the very important thing is a documentation. When we have a proper documentation, then we can communicate. We can communicate hundreds of thousands of resources and educate them, okay, in a uniformed way. I will write okay, um, a story or a novel, and I will print 1,000, okay, prints. I'll prepare 1,000 books, fine, and all the 1 lakh people will read it, and they'll understand the same story. Fine. What is the meaning of this? Through documentation, we can transfer the knowledge in a uniformed way. So in V model, what happened is, okay, the experts, okay, have come up with the SDLC model, that is V model, where the company, the software companies can develop, then can go for the long duration projects. Fine. So how it is possible? Through documentation. Fine. In each and every phase, okay, we'll make a documentation. So what will happen by making documentation? We can transfer the knowledge properly. Got it, right? We can transfer the knowledge properly. So we call V model as verification and validation, SDLC model. Fine. The first half of the V, the first half of the V, the first half, right? This is, we call it as first half is verification part. The second half is validation part. That means here testing will come into picture, and here the all the other teams will come into picture. Fine. In V model, right, all the teams, that is business analyst team, planning team, designing team, coding team, everybody will start working parallelly. This is one important thing. Fine. that we need to understand. All the guys will start working from the day one parallelly. Fine. Got it, right? In
Yes, sir.
okay. So here, whenever I'll little bit elaborate and show you uh, in VNV model, you'll understand in a better way. But let's understand. So whenever the developers, whenever the SRS document or FRS document is ready, the testing team will also understand it. The development will also understand it at the same time. The designing team will also understand the same document at the same time. Fine. Got it. So in this SDLC model, there are 4 phases of testing, that is unit, integration, system, and UAT. Hence, we'll get more quality. Fine. Hence, we'll get more quality. So let me go through about a few of the things on V model. V model is also called as verification and validation model. So the first half of the V is called as verification and the other is validation. So V model is adopted only for the long duration projects where the client have enough budget. This is very, very important thing. Okay, so it is little bit expensive because we need more resources to do the same thing. Why? Because we are making a lot of documentation, we are making testing, we are testing 4 times. That means we need more resources. So more resources means more budget. Got it? And the second half of the V is validation. In V model, all the teams will start working, okay, from the day one parallelly. Okay. It is also called as process-based SDLC model because all the teams will prepare appropriate documents and approval for all the activities. Okay, that means, okay, we will take, fine, we'll make a documentation for each and everything. Got it? Why? Because for the it is a long-term project. In V model, there are 4 formal validation testing phases are done. As I told you, 4 phases: unit, integration, system, and UAT. Okay, so this is actually about the V model. There are certain disadvantages. V model generally is not implemented for the short term project may we will not be using this. Okay, sometimes V model will become tedious. Okay, we need to take approval for small activities from the appropriate, okay, person or resources. अभी छोटा भी अगर changes हमको चाहिए तो बहुत सारा अप्रूवल लेना पड़ेगा. So that's why, okay, it sometimes it becomes tedious. It is expensive compared to other SDLC model. Unnecessary documentations are prepared sometimes. So there is a mandatory thing that we have to prepare the documentations. We have to prepare documentations for each and every activity. Hence, sometimes what it will happen is when it becomes, okay, we may start feeling that it is unnecessary. Okay, it is not that useful. So that's why, okay, we may feel boring. Okay, but when we get into uh, uh, when we start thinking about the future and the future resources, it becomes very important. We'll not feel it is something rubbish. Okay, so this is about the V model. Got it? This is about the V model. Okay, any questions on this? Do you have any questions?
Sir, V model, there is change is possible, but we take approval.
करेक्ट करेक्ट. हमको जो है ना अप्रूवल लेना. ओके,
One approval or more approval.
it all depends upon okay the team size and okay. So sometimes what will happen, only one person will be approving, sometimes multiple level will be approving, so it becomes tedious and long. Okay, it is time consuming. Generally only one person will be there. Okay, and you need to send an email, this is how these are the things that we need to make the changes, and then he will just go through it and then he will approve it. समझ लीजिए एक एप्लीकेशन है वहाँ पे लॉगिन करना है. ओके एंड लॉगिन बटन जो है यू वांट टू जस्ट मूव फ्रॉम हियर टू हियर. ओके इट इज हियर you want to move here. Then in other SDLC model क्या हो जाता है? Okay, you can do it. That they will have a conversation and then they will do it. But in V model, you will just explain. Sir, I mean, right now the position of this button is here. Okay, I want to move it here. Reason is it becomes more user friendly. Whatever reasons you want to give, you should give, and then you should take the approval. He'll just go through it. He will analyze. Okay, if he wants to ask again suggestion from someone, he'll go and ask suggestions and then he'll approach. So this is how the things will be. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
all right. So tomorrow what we'll do is we'll continue with the spiral SDLC model. Those are again 10-15 minutes discussion, and then we'll jump into okay the core testing part. Okay, core testing part, that is software testing life cycle. Okay, so you can just go through today about waterfall model till tomorrow evening, right? Waterfall, iterative, and V model. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll continue tomorrow. Fine. If you have any kinds of doubt, right, you can just ping me. Okay, shall I log out?
Yes.
All right. Okay, good night then. Bye bye.